Tonight we will sit together with one of the oldest and most tender truths that human beings have ever discovered. It is a truth the ancient Buddhist teachers spoke about with great care and compassion. And it is this, that all things change. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Everything we see, everything we touch, everything we love, everything we fear, it is all moving all the time. Like a river that never pauses, like clouds crossing a wide sky. This may sound simple, and in many ways it is. But there is a depth to this truth that can take a lifetime to fully feel. And within it there is a peace that many of us have been searching for without quite knowing where to look. These teachings are drawn from the Buddhist tradition, but they belong to no one. They are simply reminders of what you already know somewhere deep in your bones. That life is always changing, that you are a part of something vast and beautiful, and that even in the middle of uncertainty, there is a stillness waiting for you. So, take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin our journey together. There is an ancient chant that Buddhist monks and nuns have been whispering for over 2,000 years. It has been offered at births and at passings in great temples and in small rooms lit by candlelight. It goes like this: all things are impermanent, they have the nature to arise for a time and then to pass away. To understand this and live in harmony with it brings true happiness. These words have traveled across centuries, across languages, across entire civilizations, and they have endured because they point to something that every human heart already senses even before anyone puts it into words, that everything, absolutely everything, is gently changing. Tonight, let us begin here with this most tender and most honest of all truths, and let us see if within it there is not something that brings us comfort and peace. We walk through our days as though the world is solid and sure. The floor beneath our feet feels firm. The walls around us feel permanent. The face we see in the mirror each morning looks more or less the same as the one we saw yesterday. Our routines repeat themselves. Our habits carry us forward. And in all of this steadiness we come to believe, without really thinking about it, that things are fixed. That life is a kind of structure built from things that stay, and there is comfort in that belief. Of course there is. We need some sense of ground beneath us just to move through the day. But the ancient teachers noticed something. They noticed it not through theory or argument, but through the simple, patient act of sitting still and paying attention. What they found was that the closer you look at anything, the more it begins to move. The Buddha himself observed this with great clarity. He taught that all conditioned things, everything that has come into being through causes and conditions, are in a state of constant flow. Not a single thing remains the same from one moment to the next. He called this Anna, the Pi word for impermanence. And he placed it at the very heart of his teaching, because he saw that our deepest suffering often comes from wanting things to hold still in a world that simply cannot. This is not a difficult truth to understand with the mind. Most of us would nod and say, yes, of course things change. But to feel it, truly feel it in the body and the heart, that is something else entirely. That is where the real gentleness begins. Let us explore a story, one that may help us see this in a new way. Imagine for a moment that you have gone to a small old theater on a quiet evening, the kind of place with worn velvet seats and golden light along the walls. There is a faint smell of something sweet in the air, something old and warm. You settle into your chair, the room goes dark, and on the great screen in front of you, a scene unfolds. A garden appears, lush and green after a gentle rain. Flowers sway in a breeze. Droplets of water catch the light. A woman walks slowly down a stone path, her hand brushing the tops of tall grasses. A bird lifts from a branch and rises into a pale sky. Everything feels alive, continuous, real. You are drawn in completely. You forget the seat beneath you, the ceiling above you. You forget where you are. The world on the screen becomes the only world. It feels whole and living and unbroken. But then something catches your eye, a flicker, just the smallest unsteadiness in the light. And for some reason you turn around in your seat and look back toward the projection booth at the rear of the theater. And there you see it, a narrow beam of light filled with tiny dancing particles of dust streaming from a small square window. And behind that window a reel of film is turning, and on that reel there are thousands and thousands of individual frames, still images, frozen moments, each one just slightly different from the last. The projector clicks through them so quickly, 16, 20, 30 frames every second, that your eye cannot separate them. They blur together into something that looks whole, something that looks like movement, like life. But each frame on its own is perfectly still. You sit there for a moment, looking back and forth between the screen and the projector, and something quiet shifts in your understanding. What appeared to be a single continuous living scene is actually a stream of tiny separate moments moving so swiftly that they create the appearance of something solid. This is what the ancient Buddhist teachers called santati. It is the way that rapid change, when it happens quickly enough, creates the illusion of permanence. It is not that the solidity is false exactly. It is more that it is a kind of magic trick that life performs on itself. And once you see it, really see it, the world opens up in the most wonderful way. Think of a spinning top. When it is turning fast enough, it looks perfectly still, a smooth, steady shape hovering in place. But the moment it begins to slow, you see the wobble, the tilt, the movement that was always there. Or think of a hummingbird in a garden. Its wings beat so quickly that they become invisible, a soft blur on either side of its tiny body. But each wing is rising and falling dozens of times every second. The stillness we see is made entirely of motion. This is how it is with so much of our experience. What appears permanent is simply changing faster than we can see. You do not need to go to a theater to discover this. You can find it right where you are right now, in the simple act of sitting and breathing. If you have ever sat quietly for a few minutes, perhaps in meditation, perhaps just resting in a chair on a slow afternoon, you may have noticed something like this beginning to happen on its own. At first, everything seems still. The room is quiet. Your body feels like one solid thing sitting there unchanged. Your mind seems calm or perhaps busy. But either way, it feels like one continuous experience. But then, as you settle in, as your attention softens and deepens, the stillness begins to reveal itself as something else, something gentler and more alive. The breath, for instance, you might notice that no two breaths are the same. One is long and slow, the next is a little shorter. One fills the chest, the next seems to settle lower into the belly. There is a pause at the top of the inhale, a small quiet moment of suspension, and then the exhale comes, sometimes smooth, sometimes uneven. The breath is not one thing. It is a river of small changing sensations flowing through you moment by moment, and if you listen more closely, the body begins to show its secrets too. A warmth in the hands, a slight tingling in the feet, a heaviness in the eyelids, a pulse somewhere deep in the belly, a coolness on the skin where a draft passes by. Sensations appear, linger for a breath or two, and then dissolve as quietly as they arrived. New ones arise in their place. What seemed like a solid sitting body turns out to be a shimmering field of tiny events, each one arriving and departing like a guest who stays only a moment before moving on. It is as if the body, which seems so still and so familiar, has been humming with quiet life all along. We simply never slowed down enough to hear it. The Buddha described this beautifully. He said that what we call the body is not a single thing but a gathering of elements: earth, water, fire, wind, solidity, fluidity, warmth, movement. And these elements are themselves always shifting, always rearranging like patterns in a stream. And then there is the mind. If the body is a river, the mind is a sky full of weather. Sit quietly for even 5 minutes and watch what passes through. A thought about something that happened this morning, a flash of a face you once knew, A snatch of music from somewhere deep in memory, a flicker of worry about tomorrow, a moment of unexpected ease, a strange image that seems to come from nowhere at all, a word, a color, a feeling you cannot quite name. These come and go with astonishing speed. Hundreds and hundreds of them in just a few minutes, if you are really watching. One teacher compared the mind in meditation to sitting beside a quiet road in the countryside and watching the traffic pass. Carts and carriages of every shape and kind moving in every direction. You do not need to stop them. You do not need to climb aboard any particular one. You do not need to wave any of them down. You simply sit on the grass and watch. And after a while, something surprising happens. You begin to notice that the traffic itself is not a problem. It is simply what the road does. It carries things past. That is its nature. In the same way the mind carries thoughts past, it carries feelings past, it carries moods and impulses and memories and dreams one after another in an endless gentle procession. And none of them stay, not a single one. Even the thoughts that feel the most solid, the most important, the most urgent, if you watch them long enough, they soften and dissolve like mist burning off a lake in the morning sun. There is a line from the great Zen teacher who once said, "Thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They come and they go, but the sky is always there." This is not something you need to believe. It is something you can discover for yourself anytime you are willing to sit still and look, and this is perhaps the most beautiful part. When we begin to see that everything is moving, something in us relaxes. There is a fear that many of us carry often without knowing it, that if we really face the truth of change, it would be too much, that it would be frightening or sad or overwhelming, that the ground would fall away, and we would have nothing to hold on to. But what the meditators discovered, and what you may discover for yourself, is that the opposite is true. When we stop fighting the flow, when we stop insisting that things hold still, something opens up inside us. A kind of spaciousness, a kind of relief, like finally setting down a heavy bag you did not realize you were carrying. Like stepping outside after a long time indoors and feeling the air on your face for the first time in hours. It turns out that the effort of holding everything in place, the invisible work of trying to keep the world solid and predictable, that effort was exhausting us. And we did not even know it. The river does not need to be stopped. It does not want to be stopped. It only needs to be noticed. And in the noticing, there is a sweetness that is hard to put into words. A feeling of being at home, in the flow of things, rather than standing on the bank trying to hold the water back with our hands. The Buddha called this the beginning of wisdom. Not wisdom as something grand or distant, but wisdom as a quiet willingness to see things as they are, to watch the breath change, to feel the body hum with its small constant movements, to let the thoughts come and go without grasping any of them. This is the first step, and it is available to anyone at any time in any place. You do not need to go to a mountaintop or a monastery. You do not need to understand complicated ideas. You only need to sit down, be still, and listen. The river will show itself. It always does. So here is a gentle thing you might try if you like. As you rest here now, there is no effort required, nothing to achieve. Let your attention come to the breath, wherever you feel it most easily. Perhaps at the tip of the nose where the cool air enters and the warm air leaves. Perhaps in the rise and fall of the chest or the belly. Perhaps it is just a general sense of the whole body breathing like a wave washing in and drawing back. There is no right place. Just wherever the breath finds you. And as you rest your attention there lightly, like a leaf resting on the surface of a pond, see if you can notice the way each breath is a little different from the last. The way each inhale has its own shape, its own texture, its own quiet character. The way the exhale lets go in its own way every single time. No two breaths in your entire life have ever been exactly the same. Not one. You are not trying to do anything. You are simply watching the river, feeling it move through you, noticing that even here in this most intimate and familiar act, the act of breathing, nothing stays the same. Everything is gently, endlessly, beautifully changing, and that is the first teaching. Not something to be memorized, but something to be felt, that beneath the appearance of stillness, life is flowing, that beneath what seems solid, there is a river, and it has been flowing all along, patiently, gracefully, waiting for you to notice. As the old chant reminds us, all things arise and all things pass away, and in the understanding of this, there is a deep and quiet happiness. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice how you are feeling. Let the breath come and go in its own time, and when you are ready, we will continue together. A Zen teacher was once asked by a student, "What is the most important moment?" The teacher smiled and said, "This one, always this one." It sounds almost too simple to be useful, and yet, as we will discover together now, there is something hidden inside this answer that can change the way we experience everything. Something that a small child once stumbled upon, quite by accident, while looking out the window of an airplane. Let us explore a story. A father and his young daughter boarded a plane early one morning, just before sunrise. They were heading west across a wide country, and the girl had the window seat. She pressed her face close to the glass as the plane lifted off the ground, watching the earth tilt and fall away beneath them. The houses grew small, then the roads, then the rivers. Everything they knew became a kind of painting far below. Just after they rose above clouds, the sun appeared on the horizon, a thin line of gold, then a spreading warmth of orange and pink spilling across the sky like watercolors on wet paper. The clouds beneath them caught the light and turned soft shades of rose and amber. The girl watched it all with wide eyes, her breath making small circles of fog on the window. Minutes passed, then more minutes, and the sun did not seem to move. It stayed low and golden, as if the morning itself had decided to linger. She turned to her father, a little puzzled. "Something funny is happening," she said. "The morning is really stretching out." He looked out the window and realized what was going on. They were flying in the same direction as the sun, moving west as the earth turned beneath them, and so the sunrise was keeping pace with them. The morning was not passing the way it usually did. "We are traveling in the same direction as the sun," he told her, "so the sunrise is staying with us." The girl thought about this for a moment, then her eyes grew even wider. "Could you fly as fast as the sun?" she asked. "Well," he said, "if you were in a faster plane, yes. You would have to go about 1,000 miles every hour, but it could be done." She sat very still, imagining this. Then a grin spread across her face. "That would be amazing," she said. "It would always be sunrise, and you would always be having breakfast." They both laughed, and then they began to wonder together the way children and parents sometimes do when a conversation opens a door that neither of them expected. "What if you could pick any time of day," the girl said, "and just stay there?" "You mean what if you chose noon or sunset and just kept flying?" "Yes." "What if you picked the time you like best, and you just went around and around the world, and it was always that time?" They sat with this for a while, the two of them, looking out at the golden light that hung on the horizon like a lantern that would not go out, and something quiet and wonderful began to open up between them. A sense of mystery, a feeling that time, this thing we take so completely for granted, is far stranger and more beautiful than we usually allow ourselves to notice. There is a famous teaching in the Buddhist tradition that says, "The past is already gone. The future has not yet come. There is only this moment." Most of us hear something like this and think, yes, that makes sense, but we do not often stop to feel the full weight of what it means. Think about it gently, as if you were turning a smooth stone over in your hand. The past, where is it? You might say, well, it happened, it was real. And of course, in one sense that is true. Things did happen. But where is the past right now? If you search for it, you will find only one thing. A thought, a memory arising in this present moment, a picture in the mind appearing now, The past is not a place you can return to. It is a story your mind is telling right here, right now. And the future, where is that? Has anyone ever visited it? Has anyone reached out and touched tomorrow? The future too is a thought, an imagination, a picture of something that has not yet happened appearing in the mind right now. This is what the girl on the plane was brushing up against without knowing it. Flying alongside the sunrise, she had stumbled into one of the great mysteries that the Buddhist teachers have been pointing toward for thousands of years, that all there ever is, all there has ever been is now, this breath, this sound, this feeling of being alive. The great Zen master Dogen wrote, "If you want to understand all the Buddhas of past, present and future, then you should know that all things are created by mind alone." He was not being abstract. He was being very practical. He was saying, look at your own experience. Where do the past and future actually live? They live in your thoughts. They live in this moment. Now, why does this matter? Why would the ancient teachers spend so much time pointing at something that sounds so obvious? Because most of our suffering, most of our worry and regret and restlessness lives in a place that does not actually exist. Think of how much time we spend in the past replaying conversations, wishing we had said something different, missing something that is gone, carrying old hurts like heavy stones in our pockets, worn smooth from all the turning over we do. And think of how much time we spend in the future, worrying about what might happen next week, next month, next year, planning for things that may never arrive, imagining difficulties that have not yet come and may never come, rehearsing arguments that will never take place, bracing ourselves for weather that may turn out to be perfectly fine. If you added up all the hours we spend in these imagined places, these memories and projections, it would be staggering. Most of us spend the great majority of our waking life somewhere other than where we actually are, and the cost of that, though we rarely see it clearly, is that we miss the life that is right in front of us. We miss the quality of the light. We miss the sound of the wind. We miss the face of the person sitting across from us. The Buddha observed this tendency with great compassion. He said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment, not because the past and future are unimportant, but because they are not where we are. They are thoughts passing through. And when we mistake them for reality, we miss the only thing that is actually here." That girl on the plane, in her innocent wondering, had found something real. She was right there in the golden light, fully present, fully alive. Not thinking about what had happened that morning or what would happen when they landed. Just there in the stretch of a sunrise that seemed to last forever. There is a beautiful quality to moments like that. We have all had them, even if we did not have words for what was happening. A moment when you were walking somewhere familiar, and the light fell in a way you had never noticed before, and for just a breath or two, everything seemed to glow. A moment when you were standing in a garden and a breeze carried a scent you recognized from childhood, and suddenly you were completely entirely here. A moment when you were sitting with someone you love and no one was speaking, and the silence felt not empty but full. Full of something you could not name, but could absolutely feel. A warmth, a tenderness, a sense that nothing was missing. In the Zen tradition, these are sometimes called moments of just this cup of tea, warm between your hands, just this step on the path, the ground firm beneath your foot, just this breath of cool air filling your chest. Nothing added, nothing subtracted, nothing to fix or improve or figure out, just what is exactly as it is. And what is remarkable is that these moments are not rare. They are available all the time. It is our attention that is rare, our willingness to actually be where we are, rather than racing ahead to the next thing, or looking back over our shoulder at the last thing. A Buddhist nun who lived in a small temple in the mountains was once asked what she considered the most valuable possession a person could have. She thought for a long moment and then said, "Attention, gentle, unhurried attention. If you have that, you have everything." This is connected in a quiet way to what we explored a little while ago about the nature of change. Because when we truly arrive in the present moment, we discover that change is not something that happens to us from the outside. It is what the present moment is made of. Each moment arises fresh and new and unlike any moment before it, and then it passes softly, making room for the next. Like waves on a calm sea, like the sunrise that kept pace with that little plane, always arriving, always just beginning. The philosopher and poet who wrote the great works of Chinese wisdom put it this way in the Tao Ching: "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Do not resist them, that only creates sorrow. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like." This is not a teaching about giving up or being passive. It is a teaching about being here, fully here, meeting each moment as it comes, the way you might greet a friend at the door, with warmth, with openness, without needing to know in advance exactly what they are going to say. There is a small but meaningful detail in the airplane story that is easy to overlook. The father and daughter were not meditating. They were not trying to have a spiritual experience. They were just sitting together on a plane, looking out a window and talking. And yet, something opened up between them. Something real and mysterious and gentle. This is worth remembering because the present moment does not require any special technique to enter. It does not ask us to sit in any particular way or close our eyes or recite any particular words. It simply asks us to notice that we are here right now. For instance, wherever you are resting, whatever position your body has found, the sounds around you, the temperature of the air on your skin, the feeling of your own weight, held and supported, you are here. This is your sunrise right now. Not yesterday's, not tomorrow's, this one. And if you let yourself settle into that even for a few breaths, you may notice something the ancient teachers spoke about often, that the present moment is not small, it is not thin or cramped or limited. It is actually vast, boundless. There is room in it for everything, for every sound, every sensation, every feeling, every shade of light, the whole of your life. Everything you have ever experienced has happened in a moment just like this one. The whole universe is contained in this single breath. There is a lovely old teaching that says when a single flower blooms, it is spring throughout the entire world. That is what the present moment is like. It is not one small piece of time. It is everything arriving at once, fresh and whole and complete. The Zen teacher, who founded one of the great meditation communities in the West, used to say when you do something you should burn yourself up completely like a good bonfire, leaving no trace of yourself. He did not mean anything harsh by this. He meant be so fully here that there is no leftover self standing to the side, watching and judging and measuring. Just be the moment completely. The little girl on the plane understood this without any teaching at all. She was the sunrise. She was the wonder. She was the laughter. She was breakfast at 7:45 in the morning forever and ever. And it was the most natural thing in the world. So as we rest here together, let us take just a moment to appreciate what a strange and wonderful thing it is to be alive right now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. In this breath, in this body, in whatever room or space or bed you have found yourself in tonight, the morning is always stretching out if we are willing to notice. The sunrise never really ends. It is always happening somewhere. And in the same way, this moment, this one, is always here, waiting for us, patient and warm and full of quiet light. As the Buddha gently reminded us, the secret of health for the mind and body is not to mourn for the past, not to worry about the future, but to live in the present moment wisely and earnestly. That is all, just this, just here, just now. Let us pause for a moment, let the breath settle. Notice whatever you are feeling without needing to change it. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a saying from an old indigenous tradition that goes like this: Sometimes I go about pitying myself, and all the while I am being carried by great winds across the sky. Let that settle for a moment. Sometimes I go about pitying myself, and all the while I am being carried by great winds across the sky. It is such an honest thing to say, because we do we not? We go about pitying ourselves. We feel small and worried and unsure. We wonder how we will manage. We tighten up, clench our hands, brace for what might come next. And all the while, something enormous and unseen is holding us up. Something we did not ask for and cannot control. Something that has been carrying us since the very beginning. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a word for this kind of trust. It is called saddha, and it does not mean blind faith or believing in something you cannot see. It means something closer to confidence, a quiet, grounded confidence in the life that is already moving through you, in the breath that breathes itself, in the heart that beats without being asked, in the mysterious intelligence of a body that knows how to heal a wound, digest a meal, and grow a child, all without a single conscious instruction. Tonight, let us rest in that, in the possibility that we are held far more than we know. Let us begin with a story about a grandfather. He was an old man who had spent his whole life in a rural valley farming the same land his family had farmed for generations. He knew every hill, every stream, every stand of trees on that property. He had watched the seasons turn there more times than he could count. But there was one thing he had never done. He had never flown in an airplane. His grandchildren decided to change that. For his birthday, they arranged a ride in a small plane at a little airfield not far from the farm. It was a single-engine aircraft, the kind with wide wings and a propeller that sputters to life with a cough and a roar. The old man was nervous. You could see it in the way he gripped the edge of the cockpit as they helped him in. His knuckles were white, his jaw was set. But he did not say no. He climbed in, buckled the belt across his lap, and nodded to the pilot. The plane taxied down the grass strip, bounced twice, and then lifted into the air. The old man's stomach dropped for a moment, and his hand found the edge of the seat. But then something happened. The valley he had known his whole life began to unfold below him in a way he had never imagined. There was his farmhouse, small as a toy, with its grey roof and the washing line out back. There was the creek where he used to fish as a boy, winding like a silver thread through the green fields. There was the old stone wall he had built with his father, stretching along the hillside like a sentence written in rock. There were the mountains he had always seen from below, now spread out around him, like the rim of a great bowl, soft and blue in the distance. Everything he had known from the ground was transformed, the same land, the same life, but seen from a place he had never been. It was, in its own quiet way, a kind of revelation. They flew for nearly an hour over ridges he had hiked, and fields he had planted, and roads he had driven 1,000 times. All of it made new by this single change of view, all of it familiar and strange and beautiful at the same time. When the plane touched down again, his grandchildren were waiting. They rushed over, excited and eager. "How was it?" they asked. "Was it wonderful?" "It was," he said, nodding slowly. "It was something else. Were you scared?" He paused, and a sheepish smile crossed his face. "I will tell you the truth," he said. "I was nervous the whole time. I never did fully let my weight down. I never did fully let my weight down." What a beautiful and recognizable thing to say, because is that not how so many of us move through our lives? We are on the ride. We are in the air. Life is carrying us, showing us extraordinary things, and yet somewhere deep in our body, we are holding on. We are gripping. We are keeping some small part of ourselves pulled up just in case. As if by not fully surrendering our weight to the seat, we might somehow protect ourselves from a fall. The Buddha spoke about this. Gently, he noticed that one of the deepest habits of the human mind is clinging. We cling to what we have. We cling to what we want. We cling to our ideas about how things should go. And this clinging, he taught, is one of the roots of our unease. Not because the things we hold on to are bad, but because the holding itself creates a kind of tension, a tightness, a subtle exhaustion that runs through everything we do, and letting go, which sounds so simple when we say it, is actually one of the bravest things a person can do, because it means trusting that the air beneath the wings is enough, that the ride will hold, that we do not have to keep ourselves aloft by the strength of our own worry. There is another story that paints this trust in a different color. It takes place not in the countryside but in a great busy city. Imagine someone who has lived in such a city for many years, a crowded place full of noise and rush and strangers, the kind of place where people walk quickly, eyes ahead, earphones in, rarely looking at one another, and yet over all those years, something kept happening. Small, ordinary, almost invisible moments of kindness, the kind that never make the news, the kind that no one writes down. This person would be walking down the street, perhaps hurrying to get somewhere, mindful of plans and worries, and drop something. A letter, some coins spilling from a pocket, a book slipping from under an arm, a set of keys clattering to the pavement, and someone, a complete stranger, would call out from behind, "Excuse me, you dropped something." And the person would turn back surprised and pick it up, and the stranger would nod or smile briefly and keep walking. No fuss, no expectation, just a small act of looking out for someone else. It happened again and again over the years, in shops and on sidewalks and in crowded train stations. On rainy mornings and hot afternoons and cold winter evenings, different strangers every time. People of every kind and every age, and each time the same simple words, "You dropped something." One day, after many years of this, the person sat down and wrote a few quiet words about it. Not a grand statement, not a speech, just a simple reflection. Something like, "I have lived in this city for a very long time, and all that time I have been dropping things, and all that time the people of this city have been watching over me. They have pointed and said, 'You dropped something,' and I picked it up. I have waited all these years, and I want now to say thank you." There is something in that story that touches the heart. Is there not something about the quiet faithfulness of strangers? The way human beings, without being asked, without knowing one another, without any promise of reward, simply look out for each other. The Buddha taught that deep within every being there is a nature that is fundamentally good. He called it our Buddha nature. It is not something we have to earn or develop or achieve. It is already there. The way the sun is already behind the clouds on an overcast day. It does not go away. It cannot be destroyed. It simply waits for the clouds to thin. And you can see it in these small moments, in the stranger who says you dropped something, in the person who holds a door open for no reason, in the way a group of people, even people who do not know each other, will come together instantly when someone nearby needs help. There was a great legal thinker who once made a fascinating observation about human nature. He said that if a child fell into a river or an elderly person were in a building that caught fire or someone fainted on the street, any group of people, no matter their background, no matter their circumstances, would rush to help. Something in us comes alive in those moments, something deeper than our differences, something that recognizes without thinking that we belong to one another. This is the trust the Buddhist teachings point to. Not trust in any particular outcome, not trust that everything will go the way we want, but trust in this deeper nature, trust in the goodness that is woven into the fabric of being alive. Trust that we are not alone even when we feel alone, and perhaps there is an even deeper layer of trust than that. A trust not just in human kindness, but in the great rhythm of life itself. Think about the breath for a moment. You did not decide to breathe. You did not read a manual on how to do it. You did not sign up for breathing lessons when you were born. The breath simply came. It came, and it has not stopped since. Breath after breath, year after year, through sleep and waking, through sickness and health, it has been with you every single moment of your life, faithful and patient, never once asking for thanks. And the heart your heart has been beating since before you were born. Through every joy, every sorrow, every ordinary afternoon, it does not need your permission. It does not need your encouragement. It simply beats on and on and on, like a quiet drum in a great forest, keeping time with something vast. There is a passage from a beloved poet of the East that speaks to this beautifully. He wrote in his own way that nothing in this world is ever alone for a single moment. The fish is held by the wave. The bird is held by the sky. The seed is held by the soil. Every living thing is cradled in something greater, something it cannot see but can always feel. This is what that old indigenous saying points to. Sometimes I go about pitying myself. Yes, we do. We feel small and afraid and unsure. But all the while great winds are carrying us, the breath is breathing us, the heart is beating us, the earth is holding us up. The whole of life is conspiring gently and patiently to keep us here. A teacher once told this story to a group of students who were struggling with worry and uncertainty. There was a small bird, he said, who lived on a branch beside a river. Every morning, the bird would look at the river flowing by and think, what if the water stops? What if there is no more river tomorrow? And it would grip the branch a little tighter just in case. But of course, the river never stopped. It kept flowing as it always had. And one day the bird looked down and noticed something. The branch it was gripping so tightly was itself part of a tree. And the tree was rooted deep in the earth, and the earth was turning slowly through space. And everything was being held. The bird loosened its grip. Not because the river was guaranteed. Not because the future was certain, but because it realized that holding on so tightly was not what was keeping it safe. What was keeping it safe was something much larger than its own small claws. The invitation here is not to stop caring or stop planning or pretend that life is not sometimes difficult. It is. The winds do blow hard sometimes. The ride does get bumpy, but there is a difference between riding through the bumps with a white-knuckle grip and riding through them with your weight resting fully on the seat. The bumps may be the same. The experience is entirely different. The great Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Smile, breathe and go slowly." That is not a teaching about being passive. It is a teaching about trust. Trust that this moment is enough. Trust that you are enough. Trust that the winds beneath you know where they are going even when you do not. So tonight, as you rest here, you might let yourself feel that. Feel the surface beneath you, holding your weight without being asked. Feel the air entering your lungs without any effort on your part. Feel the gentle rhythm of your own heartbeat, steady and faithful. Notice how much of your life is simply happening beautifully and reliably without you having to manage any of it. The blood moves through your veins, the body warms itself, the cells do their quiet, invisible work. All of it is being taken care of while you rest. You are being carried, you have always been carried, and the winds have always known where to go. Let us rest here for a moment. Feel whatever you feel. There is nothing to fix and nowhere to be. And whenever you are ready, we will continue on together. Let us explore a story. An old traveler was walking along a dusty road one afternoon when he came upon a very old man kneeling in the earth beside the road. The old man's hands were deep in the soil, his fingers were dark with it, and beside him was a young sapling, thin and bare, its roots wrapped in damp cloth, waiting to be planted. The traveler stopped and watched for a moment. The afternoon sun was warm on his shoulders. Somewhere nearby, a bird was singing. The old man worked slowly, carefully, scooping the dark earth with his hands and making a hollow just the right size for the young roots. "What are you planting, old friend?" the traveler asked. "An almond tree," the man said without looking up. He placed the sapling gently into the hole and began pressing the soil around it, the way you might tuck a blanket around a sleeping child. The traveler raised his eyebrows. He knew something about almond trees. They are slow and patient growers. It takes 15 or 20 years before an almond tree bears its first fruit. 20 years of sun and rain and waiting before the first white blossoms appear and the first green almonds begin to swell on the branch. And this man, kneeling here in the dirt, was very old indeed. His hair was white as milk. His back was bent from years of work. His hands trembled slightly as he patted the earth into place. "Forgive me," the traveler said, "but why would you plant an almond tree at your age? You will not be here to see it bear fruit." The old man paused. He looked up with clear, bright eyes, and he said simply, "I live as though I will never leave." The traveler stood there for a long moment, turning this over. Then he leaned toward his companion and said quietly, "And I live as though each day were my last." They looked at each other, the traveler and the old man, and neither of them said who was right, because perhaps they both were. Perhaps these are not two opposing ways to live, but two sides of the same coin, spinning gently in the air. Two ways of saying the same thing: this moment matters. Be here for it. There is something in this story that sits at the very heart of what it means to live well in a world that is always turning. Something the old man understood in his bones there in the warm earth with his almond tree. On one hand, there is the old man's way to plant, to build, to put your hands in the earth and begin something you may never see finished. To live with such fullness and such faith that the question of time does not even arise. You plant because planting is what you do, because the tree wants to grow, because the earth is ready and willing, because some part of you knows that life does not belong only to you, it belongs to the ones who will come after, to the shade they will sit in on hot afternoons, to the fruit they will taste on autumn mornings, to the roots that will hold the hillside together long after you have returned to the earth yourself. And on the other hand, there is the traveler's way, to live each day as though it were precious and unrepeatable, to taste the food, to feel the sun, to say the kind word now, not later, to hold nothing back, to let each day be full and complete in itself, like a ripe fruit that has nothing to prove. The Buddhist tradition holds both of these truths gently side by side. It does not ask us to choose between them. In fact, one of the most beautiful things about the Buddha's teaching is how comfortably it sits with paradox. Life is brief and precious, yes, and life is vast and ongoing, yes, both are true. Both can live in the same heart, in the same breath, and when we look around, we can see this paradox playing out everywhere in the great rhythms that surround us. The heartbeat, that small faithful drum in the chest, it contracts and then it expands. It pulls inward and then it opens outward, over and over from the very first moment of life. This is the most intimate rhythm we know, and it is always doing the same thing. Closing and opening, gathering and releasing, holding on and letting go. The breath does the same. The lungs fill and then they empty. The tide comes in and then it goes out. The seasons turn from the warmth and fullness of summer, when the trees are heavy with leaves and the evenings stretch long and golden, to the quiet stillness of winter, when the branches are bare and the earth rests under a blanket of cold. And then, when the time is right, the first crocuses push through. The birds return, the air softens, and it all begins again. The moon grows full and round, bright enough to cast shadows on the ground, then slowly thins to a silver sliver, then disappears entirely into the dark sky. And then, just when you might begin to wonder if it will come back, it returns. A faint curve of light at the edge of the night, growing again, always growing again. The Buddha noticed that this rhythm is not something separate from us. It is what we are made of. We are creatures of expansion and Clear's throat contraction. Our lives move through seasons just as the natural world does. There are times of growth and abundance when everything seems to be blooming at once. And there are times of quiet, of drawing inward, of composting and resting and waiting for the next green shoot to appear. Neither season is better than the other. The winter is not a mistake. The outfield is not broken, it is simply resting, gathering its strength for what comes next. Let us explore another story, one about the turning of generations. A teacher approaching the middle years of life traveled across the country to meet his grandson for the first time. The child was only a few weeks old, tiny and warm and impossibly new. When the teacher arrived at the house, his daughter placed the baby in his arms. And for a long moment he just stood there in the hallway, holding this small breathing bundle, feeling the weight of him, the warmth of him. The baby's eyes were closed, his mouth made small, dreaming movements. His hand, no bigger than a walnut, curled around the teacher's finger, and something shifted inside the teacher's chest, something old and deep and hard to name. It was not a thought exactly, more like a feeling that rose up from somewhere beneath thought. A sense of time folding in on itself, of past and future meeting in this one warm, breathing moment. He had held babies before, of course. He had raised his own children. He remembered the late nights, the early mornings, the gentle rocking in the dark. He remembered how it felt to be young and new to all of it. But this was different. This was the next circle of the wheel. This was life saying gently and clearly, the story continues. You are part of something that did not begin with you and will not end with you. He looked down at the child's face, so smooth, so unwritten, clear as throat, and he thought about his own face, which had gathered so many lines and stories over the years, and he realized that he was no longer the young man he still sometimes imagined himself to be. He was the grandfather now, the elder, the one who plants the almond tree. And instead of sadness, what he felt was a kind of wonder, a sense of being part of something so much larger than himself, a great wheel turning generation after generation, each one handing something to the next. Not just genes or possessions, but something harder to name. A kind of tenderness, a kind of hope, a willingness to keep going, to keep planting, to keep placing small, warm lives into the world and trusting that they will find their way. The Buddha once said, as a mother would protect her only child with her life, even so, let one cultivate a boundless love towards all beings. Holding that tiny grandson, the teacher understood those words in a new way, not as instruction, but as description. This is what the heart does. When it opens, snorts, it protects, it cherishes, it loves without limit. And yet, even as new life arrives, change comes in other ways too. Sometimes quietly, sometimes without warning. In that same season of his life, the teacher received a phone call one afternoon. A member of his family had been in an accident on the road. The details came in pieces: a sudden collision, a car badly damaged, a rush to the hospital, and then mercifully the news that she was all right, shaken and bruised but whole. She had walked away from something that could have been much worse. The teacher put down the phone and sat very still for a long time. It is a particular kind of quiet. The quiet that comes after a close call, after the phone rings with bad news that turns at the last moment into something bearable. The heart is still racing, the hands are still trembling, but somewhere inside a voice is whispering, "She is okay, it is all right." And in that whisper there is an enormous gratitude, a gratitude so large it almost hurts. The Buddha taught that life is precious beyond measure, not because it lasts, but precisely because it does not. Every morning we wake up is a gift that was never guaranteed. Every conversation, every meal, every ordinary afternoon is happening against the backdrop of this truth. And when something reminds us of that, even something frightening, there can be a strange grace in it, a sharpening of the senses, a deepening of love, a quiet vow to waste less time on things that do not matter. Around the same time, the teacher traveled to a retreat he was leading, and a friend he had not seen in many years sent her daughter to attend. The daughter was a young woman now, bright and graceful. The teacher remembered her as a small child running through a garden, laughing. And now here she was, grown, sitting quietly in a circle of meditators, with a question in her eyes that had not been there before. She had come because she was facing a difficult time in her health, something uncertain, something that asked her to be braver than she had ever needed to be before. And she wanted to sit. She wanted to be still. She wanted to listen to whatever the silence might have to teach her. There was a quiet strength in her that the teacher could see, a willingness to meet what was coming with open eyes. The teacher looked at her across the room and felt the full sweep of time passing through that quiet space. The little girl in the garden chasing butterflies, calling out with delight. The young woman in the meditation hall sitting upright, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm. The years between them gone in what Clear's throat felt like a single breath. A whole childhood, a whole becoming, compressed into the space between two heartbeats. The Buddha spoke of this. He said that change comes like the swish of a horse's tail, quick, sudden. Snorts before you can blink, the landscape has shifted, a baby arrives, a loved one stumbles, a child becomes an adult, and then another day begins, and the wheel turns again. What does all of this ask of us? Perhaps nothing more than what the old man with the almond tree already knew, that we are here to plant, to tend, to show up with our hands in the earth, regardless of what we know about time, regardless of what we know about outcomes. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition that says, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This is not laziness, it is trust. Trust in the rhythm, trust in the seasons, trust that life knows how to grow, even when we are not watching, even when we are not trying to make it happen. The almond tree does not hurry, it does not check to see if it is growing fast enough. It does not compare itself to the oak or the willow. It simply reaches its roots down into the dark soil and its branches up into the open sky. And it becomes slowly and faithfully what it was always going to become. And perhaps we are not so different. Perhaps our work is not to rush or to force or to figure everything out, but to plant what we can, tend what is in front of us, and trust the turning of the wheel. As the old man said, with dirt on his hands and light in his eyes, I live as though I will never leave, and perhaps that is not a denial of change, but the deepest possible embrace of it, to live so fully in this moment, that the question of how many moments remain simply falls away like a leaf from a branch, like a breath at the end of a long day. Let us pause here for a moment. Feel the gentle rhythm of your own breath, rising and falling like a quiet tide. And when you are ready, we will continue on together. In the middle of a great ancient city in the east, there stood a monastery. It was enormous. Red roofs rose in tiers against the sky, their edges curved like the wings of birds in flight. Golden statues gleamed in the dim halls. Carved wooden pillars darkened by centuries of incense smoke held up vaulted ceilings, painted with scenes of clouds and lotus flowers and gentle-eyed figures sitting in meditation. It was the kind of place that made you lower your voice the moment you stepped inside. The kind of place where the air itself seemed to hum with something old and calm. And in a small room at the heart of this vast and beautiful place, a woman sat teaching. She was not a large woman. In fact, she was quite small, elderly, with silver hair pulled back from her face and a smile that arrived easily and stayed. She wore simple robes. Her voice was soft, and when she spoke, people leaned in, close to hear. Not because she was hard to understand, but because there was something in her stillness that drew people toward her, the way a lantern draws travelers on a dark road. She had been teaching in this way for many years, and because she was known for her wisdom and her kindness, all manner of people came to see her. They came from across the country, and sometimes from far beyond it. They came on foot, and by car, and by train. Some made journeys of many days just to sit with her for an hour. The stream of visitors was remarkable in its variety. Generals in crisp uniforms came and sat on the floor before her, their medals clinking softly as they settled, their usual authority somehow softened by the quiet of the room. Members of the royal family arrived with attendants and garlands of sweet jasmine, the fragrance filling the corridor long before they appeared. Politicians came between meetings. their phones silenced for once, their carefully prepared faces slowly relaxing into something more honest. Artists came carrying questions about beauty and truth and why their work sometimes felt empty. Farmers came with callous hands and worries about the rain and the harvest and the future of their families. And alongside all of these, ordinary people came too. Mothers and fathers who were struggling, young people who felt lost, elderly people who were tired and looking for some comfort, people who had lost someone they loved, people who had just received good news and did not know what to do with their joy. Each person brought something different, a question, a worry, a hope, a grief. Some brought offerings of fruit and flowers. Some brought only their silence. But all of them, everyone, came because they had heard that this small woman in the vast monastery had something they needed. Not answers exactly, something quieter than that, something closer to peace, and what was remarkable was this. She received them all, snorts one after another, hour after hour, day after day. And she never seemed overwhelmed. She never seemed hurried or distracted or drained. Each person who sat before her received her full, warm, unhurried attention, as though they were the only person in the world. A visiting teacher once watched this for several days. He watched the stream of visitors arrive and depart. He watched the woman sit in her small room, calm as a stone in a riverbed, while the water of the world flowed around her and over her and past her. And finally he could not help himself. He had to ask, "How do you do it?" he said. "How can you sit here day after day with all of these people, the royalty, the politicians, the generals, the grieving, the confused, the joyful? Everyone wants something from you. Everyone brings their heaviest burdens and lays them at your feet. How do you remain so peaceful?" She looked at him with gentle amusement, the way a grandmother might look at a child who has asked why the sky is blue. "I do not think about it too much," she said. "I just try to be with whoever is here now, and everything seems to follow from that. That was all. I just try to be with whoever is here now." There is a teaching hidden inside that simple sentence. A teaching that the Buddhist tradition has been offering for a very long time. But that is easy to overlook because of how quietly it arrives. The teaching is this: peace is not something you find by going somewhere else. It is not waiting for you at the end of a long journey, or on top of a distant mountain, or at the bottom of a difficult achievement. Peace is what you find when you stop going somewhere else and simply arrive where you already are. The woman in the monastery had not escaped the world. The world was pouring through her door every single day. Generals and grieving mothers and restless politicians, the full, messy, complicated, beautiful human parade. But she was not trying to manage it, or solve it, or resist it, or wish it were different. She was simply there, present, available like a deep well that does not run dry no matter how many people come to draw water from it. The Buddha himself spoke about this quality. He called it samadhi, which is sometimes translated as concentration, but which really means something more like collected stillness, a gathering of the attention into one place, one moment, not a tense, forced focus, but a relaxed, open, settling the way a bird settles onto a branch, the way snow settles onto a field, naturally, gently, without effort. One of the great leaders and peacemakers of the modern age, a man who helped guide the early years of the United Nations, wrote something beautiful about this kind of inner stillness. He wrote, "When we come to the point of rest at the center of our being, we encounter a world where all things are at rest, and then a tree becomes a mystery, a cloud, a revelation, and each person we meet an unexplored universe." Let that settle in for a moment. When we come to the point of rest at the center of our being, we encounter a world where all things are at rest. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a description of something real, something you may have tasted in your own life. Have you ever had one of those moments when everything suddenly seemed vivid? When the colors were brighter, the edges sharper, the sounds clearer, when the face of someone you have known for years suddenly looked new, as though you were seeing them truly for the first time. These moments tend to happen when we are not trying, when we have stopped rushing, when the mind, for whatever reason, has grown quiet. Perhaps on a slow morning before the day has gathered its momentum, when you are standing by a window with a warm cup in your hands and the light is just beginning to touch the rooftops. Perhaps on a long walk, when the rhythm of your steps has lulled the thinking mind to rest and the world seems to shimmer with a kind of gentle clarity. Perhaps sitting in a garden, watching the way the wind moves through the leaves and realizing you have not had a single thought for several minutes. Perhaps in the middle of the night when you have woken for no reason and the house is silent and the darkness feels not empty but somehow soft and full and alive. In those moments the world reveals itself. Not a different world. This world, the same trees, the same sky, the same familiar room, but seen with fresh eyes. Eyes that are not clouded by plans and worries and the constant hum of what comes next. Everything looks the same and yet completely new. As though you have been given a gift you did not know you were missing. The Buddhist tradition calls this clear seeing. Not seeing something special, but seeing what has always been here clearly without obstruction. As if a window that had been dusty for years has suddenly been wiped clean and you realize the view was extraordinary all along. There was a great anthropologist and thinker, a woman who spent her life studying how people live and grow and change in cultures all around the world. And she made an observation that connects beautifully to the small woman in the monastery. She said, "If you pay attention in every moment, you form a new relationship to time in some magical way. By slowing down, you become more efficient, more productive, more energetic. Focusing without distraction directly on that which is in front of you. Not only do you become immersed in the moment, you become that moment. You become that moment." What a remarkable phrase. Not that you observe the moment or that you are aware of the moment, but that you become it. The boundary between you and what is happening dissolves. There is just the sound, just the taste, just the touch, just the conversation, just life happening with nothing standing apart from it. That is what the woman in the monastery had done. She had not mastered some secret technique. She had not studied for decades in a hidden cave or read 1,000 sacred books. She had simply practiced year after year the quiet, humble art of being where she was. And over time, that practice had become her nature. The stillness was no longer something she did. It was something she was. It shone from her like warmth from a fire, and here is the beautiful thing about this. It is not reserved for monks or mystics or people who live in ancient monasteries. It is available to anyone. It is available right now, because the point of rest the peacemaker wrote about is not a place. It is not a destination you have to travel to. It is already at the center of your being. It has always been there, the way the sky is always behind the clouds, even on the greyest day, the way the ocean floor is always still, even when the surface is covered in waves. You do not have to create this stillness. You only have to stop covering it up. There is a lovely old Zen saying, "You cannot see your reflection in running water, only in still water." Think about that for a moment. A stream rushing over rock shows you nothing, just fragments, broken light, a blur of movement. But a still pond on a calm morning with no wind will show you your face as clearly as any mirror. Every detail, every line, every truth. This is what that woman in the great monastery understood so well. She knew that the stillness inside her was like a clear, calm pool. And when someone sat before her, no matter who they were, no matter what they carried, they could see their own reflection in that stillness. Not her answers, not her opinions, not her advice, their own reflection, their own clarity, their own peace, mirrored back to them by the quality of her presence. This is perhaps the greatest gift one person can offer another. Not wisdom, Not solutions, not clever words, just presence, just being there fully and completely without an agenda. The way a lake reflects the sky, not doing anything, just being still enough to show what is already true. The Buddha near the end of his life was asked by a beloved student what the most essential teaching was. And he said, simply be a lamp unto yourself, not unto me, not unto any teacher or book or tradition, unto yourself. Find the light that is already within you. Be still enough to see it and then trust it. This is what the woman in the monastery did every day for all those years. She sat still. She trusted the light within her. And one by one, the people who came to see her discovered that same light within themselves. So as we rest here together, let us take a small moment to appreciate the simplicity of all this. Not to strive for some grand inner achievement, not to try to be more peaceful than we are, just to notice quietly that there is a place inside you that is already still, already at rest, already home. It does not matter how busy the day has been. It does not matter how many thoughts are still circling, how many worries have not yet been set down. Beneath all of that, like the floor of a deep, clear lake, there is a stillness that has never been disturbed. It was there when you were a child, lying on the grass, looking up at the clouds. It is here now in this breath, in this body, and it will be here tomorrow, no matter what the day brings. The woman in the monastery knew this, and when she said, "I just try to be with whoever is here now," she was sharing the simplest and most profound truth she had found in all her years of living and teaching and sitting still, that you do not need to go anywhere to find peace. You only need to be fully where you are, and everything gently and naturally follows from that. Let us pause here. Let whatever you are feeling settle in its own time, and when you are ready, we will continue on together. A great writer once said that his tailor was the wisest person he knew, not his professor, not his priest, not his doctor, his Tor. Why? Because every time the Tor came to see him, the taught measurements. He never assumed that last year's numbers would still be true. He never said, "Oh, I already know your size." He simply brought his tape and his pins and his quiet concentration, and he measured the man as he was now today. This body, this shape, this moment, it is such a small thing. And yet, when you think about it, it is something almost none of us do for the people in our lives. We measure someone once, perhaps years ago, and we carry that measurement forward. We decide who they are. We build a picture, and then we hold them to it, sometimes for decades, without ever stopping to check whether it is still true. Our children grow and change, but we still see the awkward teenager, still hear the voice that cracked on certain words, still brace for the arguments that belong to a different year. Our partners evolve and deepen. Clears throat, but we still respond to the person they were 5 years ago, still expect the same reactions, still tell the same stories about who they are. Our friends surprise us and we feel confused, almost unsettled, because the surprise does not match the picture we have been carrying around in our pocket like a worn photograph. We do it to ourselves as well. We carry old measurements of our own hearts. I am the kind of person who cannot do that. I always react this way. I will never be good at that. These are old tape measures, stretched and faded, that we keep pulling out and laying across our lives as though they still tell the truth. What if we could be more like the tailor? What if each time we met someone we love, or each time we met ourselves in the mirror, we could come with fresh eyes and an open tape measure and simply see what is here now? What might we discover? This is really a teaching about habits, about the patterns we build over time, the grooves we wear into the path of our thinking until the grooves become so deep that we forget there ever was a path at all. The Buddhist tradition has a great deal to say about habits. In fact, one of the things that surprises people most when they first sit quietly in meditation is just how strong their habits are. You sit down, you close your eyes, you take a breath, and you intend to simply be still and present. Just here, just now. How hard can it be? And within seconds, the mind is off, planning dinner, replaying a conversation from this morning, worrying about something next week, composing a letter you will never actually send, humming a song you heard 3 days ago and cannot seem to shake, remembering something embarrassing you said at a party years ago. On and on it goes. Like a puppy that has been let off the leash in an open field, it is not a failure. It is simply what habits do. They run. They have been running for a long time, and they are very good at it. The Buddha compared the untrained mind to a wild horse or to a monkey swinging from branch to branch. Not because the mind is bad, but because it is energetic and restless and deeply patterned. And the patterns go far deeper than thoughts. We have habits of feeling, habits of reacting, habits of posture and tension, and the way we hold our jaw when we are concentrating. We have habits of worry, and habits of judgment, and habits of the particular way we tighten our shoulders when someone says something we do not like. These habits are layered into us, like the rings of a tree, one season on top of another, until they feel like the tree itself. And this is the key insight. They feel like who we are, but they are not. Let us explore a story that shows this in a tender and gently humorous way. There was a beloved member of a small spiritual community who became very ill. For a long time, she rested at home, surrounded by friends and family who cared for her deeply. Her body grew weaker, and the days took on a slow, quiet rhythm. People came and sat with her. They read to her. They brought flowers and soup and their gentle company. But here is the remarkable thing. Every few days without fail, she would get up from her bed, walk slowly to the kitchen table, sit down and pay the bills. Her friends would find her there, pen in hand, sorting through envelopes and writing checks. And they would say gently, "What are you doing? Come back and rest." And she would say, "The bills are due." This went on for weeks. She would rest and then she would get up and pay the bills. Rest and then pay the bills. As though some deep, quiet engine inside her simply could not stop doing what it had always done. There is something in this story that is both funny and deeply touching. Funny because we recognize the absurdity of it, and touching because we recognize ourselves in it. We all have our version of paying the bills, some habit so worn into us that even in the most extraordinary circumstances, we reach for it automatically. The way we check our phones first thing in the morning, the way we apologize for things that are not our fault, the way we make one more plan, one more list, one more arrangement, even when what the moment really asks for is simply to be still. Our habits are loyal, they show up every time. But the question the Buddhist path gently asks is, are you your habits? Or is there something underneath them that is much more free? The answer, which comes not from thinking but from quiet observation, is that we are far more flexible than we imagine, far more spacious, far more capable of setting something down and picking up something new. The Zen tradition has a lovely way of putting this. A master once said to a student who was struggling with old patterns, "You are not the weather, you are the sky. The weather changes constantly. Storms come, sunshine comes, fog rolls in and then burns off. But the sky never changes. It holds it all. It has room for everything, and it is never damaged by any of it." In the same way, our habits and patterns and well-worn reactions are the weather of our inner life. They blow through, they feel very real and very important while they are happening. But they pass. They always pass. And what remains underneath is something open and clear and vast. Something that was never defined by any single pattern. The Buddha put it this way: nothing is permanent. Everything is subject to change. Be aware of this and you will find peace. And this awareness, this noticing, is really the beginning of what we might call the art of letting go. Now, letting go is a phrase that gets used a great deal, and it can start to sound like something you are supposed to do, like a task on a list. Let go of your anger. Let go of your fear. Let go of the past, as though you could simply open your hand and drop it the way you might drop a stone into a pond. But real letting go is gentler than that. It is less like dropping something. and clears throat more like noticing that you have been holding it. There is a difference. When you suddenly realize you have been clenching your fist for the last hour, the hand opens almost by itself. You do not have to force it. The noticing does the work. One teacher offered this simple phrase as a kind of quiet companion for daily life. 2 words: let go, not as a command, not as pressure, just as a gentle reminder, something to whisper to yourself in the morning, or during a walk, or in the middle of a difficult conversation. Let go. Not let go of everything. Just let go of whatever is ready to be released. Whatever your hands are tired of holding, snorts a breath in. Let a breath out. Go, that is all. And then there is a story about letting go that has been making people smile for a very long time. It is the story of a bricklayer who learned this lesson in the most unexpected and dramatic way. This fellow was a hard-working man, careful and practical in all things. One day he was working alone on the roof of a tall building, and when he finished the job, he found that he had a great many leftover bricks. Rather than carry them down by hand, which would have taken many trips, he decided to lower them to the ground in a barrel using a rope and pulley attached to the side of the building. So he secured the rope at the bottom, climbed back up to the roof, loaded all the bricks into the barrel, and then went back down to the ground to lower it. He untied the rope and held on tight. Now, here is the part he had not quite thought through. The barrel, loaded with all those bricks, was considerably heavier than he was, and the moment he untied that rope, his feet left the ground. Up he went, rising quickly along the side of the building, hands burning on the rope, the wind in his ears, while the barrel of bricks descended at the same speed in the other direction. It must have been quite a sight from the street below. Somewhere around the middle of the building, the two of them met, the barrel going down, the man going up. This was, as you might imagine, an uncomfortable encounter. Shaken but still clinging to the rope, because what else could he do? The man continued upward until he reached the pulley at the very top. There he held on for all he was worth, his knuckles white, his hat long gone. Clear's throat, meanwhile, far below, the barrel hit the ground with a tremendous thump and the bottom broke clean open. All the bricks tumbled out and scattered across the ground. Now the barrel was empty and very light, and the man still holding the rope up at the top was very much not light at all. So down he came just as quickly as he had gone up, and the empty barrel rose cheerfully to meet him once again. They passed each other a second time, somewhere around the middle of the building. Another uncomfortable meeting. He finally reached the ground bruised and bewildered, and at that point he said, he finally had the presence of mind to do what he should have done at the very beginning. He let go of the rope. It is a silly story in its way, but there is a wisdom buried in it that is worth sitting with. How often do we hold on long past the point where holding on is helping us? How often do we grip tighter precisely when the situation is asking us to release? We hold on to old arguments, old grudges, old images of ourselves that no longer fit. We hold on to the rope even as it is dragging us up and down the side of the building, bumping and scraping, because we are afraid of what will happen if we open our hands. And then when we finally do let go, what happens? We land on the ground. We are where we were always going to be, and the rope which seemed so essential turns out to have been the very thing causing all the trouble. Either we learn to let go or life teaches us later. That is how it works, and the beautiful thing is that life is patient. It will offer us the lesson again, Clear's throat, and again. Each time a little more gently if we are willing to notice. As the Buddha taught, in the end only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. So perhaps tonight as you rest here, there is something small you might set down. Not the big things, not the things that feel impossible to release. Just something small. A worry you have been carrying today. A tension in the body you have been ignoring. A thought that keeps circling and circling like a bird looking for a place to land. You do not need to push it away. Just notice it. Acknowledge it the way you might nod to someone you pass on the street, and then if it is ready, let it soften. Let the hand open, just a little. Let the breath carry it. Let go, let go. Like the tailor with his tape, fresh measurements. A new moment, a new chance to meet yourself and the world exactly as you are right now. Let us pause here for a moment. Let the body be easy. Let the mind be quiet. And when you are ready, we will continue on together. When a child sees snow for the first time, something extraordinary happens. They do not think about snow. They do not compare it to the snow they saw last year, because there was no last year with snow. They do not worry about whether the roads will be icy or whether the pipes will freeze. They do not categorize it or explain it or measure it. They simply stand there, mouth open, clears throat, eyes wide, and they see it. They see the way it falls slowly, quietly, each flake turning in the air on its own private journey. They see the way it lands on their sleeve and stays there for a moment, a tiny crystal of impossible delicacy before it vanishes. They feel the cold on their cheeks and the silence it brings. The way snow seems to muffle the whole world as though someone has draped a soft blanket over everything. This is seeing without knowing. This is experiencing something before the mind has had a chance to wrap it in labels and opinions and old stories. And it is one of the most precious capacities a human being possesses. The Zen tradition has a name for it. They call it beginner's mind. A beloved Zen master, one of the first to bring this tradition to the West, wrote something that has stayed with people for generations. He said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few." Think about that quietly. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. When we are new to something, everything is alive. Everything is interesting. We ask questions that a seasoned person would never think to ask, because the seasoned person already knows the answers or thinks they do. We make connections that an expert would overlook, because the expert's mind has already sorted everything into its proper drawer and closed it. The beginner sees the snow. The expert sees frozen precipitation. And what this Zen master was suggesting gently and with great warmth is that the whole aim of spiritual practice is to keep this beginner quality alive, not to become an expert in meditation or wisdom or inner peace, but to remain always a beginner, always arriving fresh, always seeing for the first time, always willing to be surprised. He said, in fact, that this was the entire goal. The goal of practice is always to keep our beginner's mind, not to graduate from it, not to move beyond it, but to return to it again and again, the way the tide returns to the shore. There is another teaching from a different Zen master that takes this even further. This teacher was known for answering the great questions of life with two simple words. A student would come to him and ask, "What is the meaning of life?" And he would say quietly, "Don't know. Where do we come from before we are born? Don't know what happens after this life. Don't know what is love. Don't know what is consciousness. Don't know." Now this was not ignorance. It was not laziness or evasion or a lack of caring. Quite the opposite. If you looked at his face when he said these words, you would not see blankness or boredom. You would see something shining, an aliveness, a warmth, a tenderness even, as though the not knowing itself were a door he had walked through into some vast and sunlit room that the rest of us were still looking for the key to. He was teaching his students something that goes against almost everything our culture tells us. Our culture says know the answer, be certain, have an opinion. The person who says "I don't know" in a meeting is the one who feels embarrassed. The person who says "I don't know" at a dinner party changes the subject. But this teacher was saying the opposite. He was saying that don't know is the most honest and the most alive place a mind can be. That it is the place where real learning happens, where real seeing happens, where life in all its wild and unpredictable beauty can actually reach us. He was teaching his students that the deepest kind of freedom does not come from finding all the answers. It comes from being willing to rest in the questions, to hold them lightly the way you might hold a bird in your open palm, not gripping, not squeezing, not demanding that it sing for you, just letting it sit there alive and warm and free to fly whenever it is ready. Don't know is not a failure. It is an opening. It is the mind saying, I am available, I am not full, I am not finished. There is room in me for something new, something I have not imagined yet. The Christian mystics had their own beautiful language for this same experience. They called it the cloud of unknowing. It comes from a small anonymous book written many centuries ago by a contemplative who understood that the deepest encounters with the sacred do not happen through the intellect. They happen when we are willing to set down what we think we know and step into the cloud, into the soft quiet, luminous not knowing, into the place where the mind is still and the heart is open and something beyond words can finally reach us. And a modern philosopher and teacher, someone who spent his life exploring the meeting place between Eastern and Western wisdom, called it the wisdom of insecurity. He noticed that most of our anxiety comes from trying to make life secure, trying to pin everything down, trying to know in advance exactly how things will go. We want guarantees, we want promises. We want someone to tell us that everything will be fine and mean it. But life refuses to be pinned down. It is too alive for that, too creative, too full of surprises, both tender and startling. And the harder we try to hold it still, the more anxious we become, because we are fighting a battle we can never win. It is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. The wisdom, this teacher suggested, is not in finally finding security at last. It is in discovering that we never needed it in the first place, that the insecurity we have been running from, the uncertainty we have been trying to escape, is actually the doorway to something spacious and free, that not knowing where the road leads is not a problem to be solved, but a great beautiful mystery to be lived, and that the mystery, far from being frightening, is actually where the aliveness is. It is where the juice is. It is where the wonder lives. There is a story that may help bring this out of the abstract and into the warmth of real life. An old farmer lived at the edge of a village. One day his horse ran away. The neighbors came by and said, "What terrible luck!" The farmer said, "Perhaps." The next day the horse returned, and it brought with it 2 wild horses. The neighbors came by again and said, "What wonderful luck!" The farmer said, "Perhaps." The following day, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses and fell and hurt his leg. The neighbors said, "What terrible luck!" The farmer said, "Perhaps." The next week, soldiers came through the village looking for young men to join the army. And because the son's leg was hurt, they passed him by. The neighbors said, "What wonderful luck!" And the farmer said, "Perhaps this story has been told in many versions, in many cultures for a very long time, and what it points to is not that the farmer was indifferent. He loved his horse. He loved his son. He worried about the harvest and the weather and all the things that farmers worry about. He was not made of stone, but he had learned something that most of us are still in the process of learning. He had learned that he could not see the whole picture, that life is like a tapestry being woven from behind, and from where we stand, we can only see a few threads at a time. What looks like misfortune might a few threads later reveal itself as a hidden gift. What looks like a gift might carry an unseen difficulty that only becomes clear much later. And so the wisest response in any moment was not to judge too quickly, not to stamp good or bad on every event as it clears throat arrived, but to stay open, to wait, to trust the unfolding, to give life room to show its full design before drawing conclusions. Perhaps that one gentle word holds a world of spaciousness. It is beginner's mind applied to the events of our daily lives. I do not know yet what this means, and that is all right. I will wait and see. I will stay curious. I will keep my heart open. Now this kind of openness can feel uncomfortable at first. We are so used to knowing, or at least to pretending that we know. Our minds are wonderful organizing machines. They sort and label and categorize everything from the moment we wake up until the moment we fall asleep. This is good, that is bad. This is what I want, that is what I fear. This is who I am, that is who you are. And all of this sorting is useful up to a point. It helps us cross the street and cook a meal and have a conversation. But when we mistake the labels for the reality, we lose something precious. We lose the freshness. We lose the wonder. We lose the ability to be surprised by the people and the world around us. A flower is not the word flower. A sunset is not the word sunset. The person sitting next to you is not the collection of adjectives you have assigned to them over the years. They are something far more mysterious and alive than any label could ever contain. The Buddha encouraged his students to look past the labels. He said, "Do not believe something merely because you have heard it, or because it is spoken by many, or because it is found in your books, or because it is taught by your teachers. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of all, then accept it and live up to it." This is radical openness. This is the mind of someone who is willing to set down what they have been told and truly look at what is actually here. Perhaps the most comforting thing about all of this is that beginner's mind is not something you have to build or earn or achieve. It is something you already have. You were born with it. It was the way you met the world on the very first day, and it has never left you. It has only been covered over layer by layer, year by year, by all the things you have learned and decided and concluded. Beneath all those layers, the beginner is still there, still wide-eyed, still curious, still capable of seeing snow as though it were falling for the very first time. Still capable of looking at the face of someone you have loved for 30 years and thinking, who are you really? I do not know. And how beautiful that is, and returning to that mind does not require years of training or special conditions. It can happen in a single breath. You are walking down a familiar street, a street you have walked 100 times before. And something shifts. The light falls differently through the trees. A bird sings a note you have never quite heard. The smell of rain on warm pavement reaches you, and for just a moment, the street is brand new. You have never been here before. Everything is vivid and surprising and wonderfully achingly close. That is beginner's mind, arriving uninvited like a guest you forgot you had been waiting for. That is the cloud of unknowing parting for just a moment to show you the vast, clear sky behind it. The Zen tradition says, not knowing is most intimate, meaning when the mind stops pretending it has everything figured out, that is when it is closest to the truth. That is when life can actually touch us. Not through our ideas about it, but directly skin to skin, heart to heart. This moment meeting this awareness with nothing in between. So there is nothing to figure out tonight, nothing to solve or understand or master. Just a gentle invitation to let the knowing rest for a while, to let the labels soften, to let the categories blur at the edges like colors in a watercolor painting left out in the rain. What remains when we stop knowing? Not emptiness, not confusion, something much kinder than that, a spaciousness, a readiness, a quiet willingness to meet whatever comes next with open hands and open eyes. Don't know. And in the not knowing, a great freedom, a great peace, a world full of possibilities that the expert mind could never have imagined, as the old farmer might say gently, with a knowing smile perhaps. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the mind be soft. Let the questions float unanswered like leaves on still water, and when you are ready, we will continue on together. There is an old Buddhist teaching about 8 winds that blow through every human life. They blow through the life of the rich and the poor, the young and the old, the famous and the forgotten. Clear's throat no one is spared. No one is exempt, and they always come in pairs: pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and obscurity, gain and loss. These are the 8 winds, and if you think about it honestly, you will probably recognize that most of your days are spent leaning into one and bracing against the other. We chase pleasure and try to hold it close when it arrives, like cupping a flame with our hands. We avoid pain and flinch when we see it coming, even from a great distance. We long for someone to say we have done well, and we dread blame. That sinking feeling when someone is disappointed in us. We hope for recognition and fear being overlooked. We work to build and gather and grow, and we lie awake worrying about what we might lose. You can see it in the smallest things: the way a kind comment from a stranger can lift your whole morning, the way a careless remark can darken an entire afternoon, the way you check to see if someone has responded to your message, and the tiny flutter of pleasure when they have, and the tiny weight of disappointment when they have not. These are the 8 winds blowing through the most ordinary Tuesday. This is not a flaw. It is simply what it is like to be a human being walking around on this earth with a heart that feels things and a mind that cares. The question the Buddhist path asks is not how to stop the winds from blowing. That is not possible, and it would not even be desirable. A life without any wind at all would be very still and very empty. The question is something gentler and more interesting. How do we find our balance in the middle of them? There is a story about a teacher who had spent many years writing a book. It was a book about the things closest to his heart, the teachings and practices that had shaped his life. He worked on it carefully over a long time, choosing his words with the kind of attention a gardener gives to a difficult and beautiful plant. When the book was finally published, something unexpected happened. People liked it quite a lot. It began to appear on bestseller lists. Friends called to congratulate him. Students told him it had changed their perspective. Letters arrived from strangers in distant places, thanking him for words that had touched them during difficult times. The teacher was pleased. Of course he was. He was a human being with a heart that feels things just like anyone else. One morning he walked to a shop near his home to buy the newspaper. He wanted to check whether the book was still on the list. It was a small thing, a quick errand, but as he walked, something caught his attention. A quiet voice inside him, the kind of voice that only speaks when you are paying attention. "Am I attached to this?" the voice asked. He kept walking, and then another voice, warmer and a little amused, answered back, "Of course you are attached. Otherwise, why would you be walking to the shop to buy the newspaper?" He stopped on the sidewalk and smiled. Not a smile of defeat or shame, a smile of recognition. The kind of smile that comes when you catch yourself doing something very human and decide to be kind about it rather than harsh. This is an important moment because in many traditions the goal of spiritual life is sometimes presented as a kind of immunity, as though if we practice long enough we will stop caring about praise and blame. We will float above it all, untouched, serene like a statue on a mountaintop. But that is not what the Buddha taught, and it is not what this teacher discovered on his walk to the shop. What he discovered was simpler and more honest than immunity. He discovered that he could see his own attachment clearly without pretending it was not there, and without punishing himself for having it. He could say, "Yes, I care about this. I am pleased when people like my work. I feel a little sting when they do not." And in the seeing, in the honest, warm, gentle seeing, there was a kind of freedom, not freedom from the winds, freedom in the winds. There is a wonderful phrase from the Zen tradition that speaks to this beautifully. It goes to be without anxiety about non-perfection. Read that again slowly. To be without anxiety about non-perfection, not to be perfect. That is never the aim, but to be at ease with the fact that we are not. To make peace with our own humanity. To stop waiting for the day when we will finally have it all together. when we will be calm and wise and unshakable at all times, and instead to simply be here with all our rough edges and tender spots and small endearing contradictions. The teacher who walked to the shop was not ashamed of his attachment. He did not go home and sit in meditation for 3 hours to punish himself. He bought the newspaper, checked the list, smiled again, and went about his day because he understood something that took him many years to learn, that the spiritual path is not about removing our humanity. It is about embracing it, all of it. The parts we are proud of and the parts that make us woes. The Buddha himself was once asked by a student whether he still experienced desire. And the Buddha said with great simplicity that what had changed was not the arising of feelings but his relationship to them. They still came, they still visited, but they no longer owned the house. That is a lovely way to think about it. The winds still blow, the feelings still arise. Pleasure comes and we enjoy it. Pain comes and we feel it. Praise arrives and there is warmth. Blame arrives and there is a sting. But none of them own us. None of them define us. They are visitors passing through a house that belongs to something much deeper and much more still. There was another writer, a woman who lived in a small town and poured her whole heart into her novels. And when a new book came out, she did something that makes anyone who has ever created anything smile with recognition. She would call the local bookshops one after another, using different voices each time, and ask, "Excuse me, do you carry the books of?" And then she would say her own name, disguising her voice so they would not recognize her. She just wanted to know they were there on the shelves, being seen, being available. There is something so tender about this, so recognizably human. This woman was not lacking in talent or confidence. She was brilliant and funny and fiercely original. But she cared. She wanted her work to matter. She wanted it to reach people. She wanted to know that the words she had labored over in solitude were now out there in the world, sitting on a shelf somewhere, waiting for the right person to pick them up and feel less alone. And that caring, that wishing, that hoping, it is the most natural thing in the world. It is the wind of wanting to matter, the wind of wanting to be seen, and it blows through every single one of us, no matter how wise or how practiced we may be. The 8 winds blow through every life, through the life of the meditator and the life of the novelist and the life of the baker and the life of the teacher, through the life of the monk sitting in silence and the life of the parent checking their phone to see if anyone appreciated the meal they spent all afternoon preparing. We are all in the same weather, every last one of us, and the path is not about finding a place where the weather cannot reach us. It is about learning to walk in the rain with a certain grace, to feel the drops on our face and keep going, not because we do not notice them, but because we have made friends with the sky. There is a passage from the ancient Chinese Book of Wisdom, the Touching, that speaks to this with great elegance. It says in its own flowing way, rushing into action, you fail. Trying to grasp things, you lose them. Forcing a project to completion, you ruin what was almost ripe. Think of how often we do this. We push a conversation past the point where it should have been left to rest. We hurry a decision that needed another week of quiet thought. We force a relationship into a shape it is not ready for. We try to make a child grow up faster, or a garden bloom sooner, or a wound heal on our schedule rather than its own. The Tao says the wise person takes action by letting things take their course. She remains as calm at the end as at the beginning. She does not force, she does not rush, she does not try to make the fruit ripen by pulling on the stem. This is not passivity, this is patience. This is the deep, quiet confidence that things have their own timing, and that our job is not always to push, but sometimes simply to be present and let life do what it knows how to do. There is a saying often shared in Buddhist circles. You cannot pull a flower open, you can only let it bloom, and the blooming has its own schedule, its own wisdom, its own perfect, unhurried unfolding. So what does all of this mean for us in our ordinary, beautiful, imperfect lives? Perhaps it means that we can be a little kinder to ourselves about the ways we are blown by the winds, a little more forgiving of our attachments and our desires and our small human hopes. Perhaps it means we can stop pretending that we are above it all and instead simply notice, with warmth and a touch of humor, that we are right in the middle of it. I care about this. I want this to go well. I hope they like me. I wish this had not happened. I am proud of what I made. I am stung by what they said. Yes, all of that. And none of it needs to be a problem. None of it needs to be fixed or corrected or transcended. It simply needs to be seen, held gently, met with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend who came to us with exactly the same struggles. There is a teaching attributed to the Buddha that goes, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This is not self-indulgence, it is the foundation of everything, because until we can meet our own winds with kindness, we will always be fighting them, and fighting the wind, as anyone who has ever stood on a hilltop in a storm can tell you, is exhausting and futile work. The 8 winds will blow tonight and tomorrow and every day that follows. There will be pleasures and there will be pains. There will be moments of recognition and moments of being overlooked. Things will be gained and things will be lost. This is guaranteed, and the invitation, the gentle, ancient, ever-patient invitation of the Buddhist path, is not to conquer the winds, but to find the still point within them, the place inside that is not moved. Not because it does not feel, but because it is rooted in something deeper than any wind can reach. Like a great tree in a storm, the branches sway, the leaves fly, the bark cracks and groans with the effort of standing in the wind, but the roots hold. Deep in the dark, quiet earth where no wind reaches, the roots hold fast. They grip the soil with a strength that has nothing to do with force. It is the strength of belonging, of being planted, of having been there a long time, and knowing in some deep and wordless way that this is home. And the tree remains, not unchanged. The storm will leave its marks, a branch may break, some leaves will be carried away, but the tree remains standing, breathing, reaching toward the light. You have those roots. Snorts, they are in you right now. Even as the winds blow, they have always been there, holding you to this earth, holding you to this life. You may have forgotten them, clears throat in the noise and rush of the day, but they have not forgotten you. The Zen master who was asked to summarize all of Buddhism in a single phrase once said simply an appropriate response. That is all. Not a perfect response, not an enlightened response, just an appropriate one, meeting each moment as it comes with whatever kindness and wisdom and humor you can bring to it. The winds blow and you are here, and that is enough. Let us pause here. Let whatever is moving inside you move at its own pace, and when you are ready, we will continue on together. Think about how your body feels after a long swim or after a walk in the hills on a cool morning when the air is fresh and the path is quiet and the only sound is your own footsteps and the wind in the grass. Or after a good stretch, the kind where you reach your arms above your head and feel something in your spine release that you did not even know was tight. There is a feeling that comes in those moments, an openness. A softness as though the body has been waiting patiently for permission to unfold. The chest expands, the jaw unclenches, the space between the shoulder blades widens and warms. And when the body finally does open like this, there is a relief so deep. It is almost like joy, almost like coming home after a very long journey. Your body knows this feeling well, it loves it. It is always in its quiet way reaching toward it. After every tension, it wants to release. After every holding, it wants to let go. After every closing, it wants to open again. Watch a cat. After it has been startled, it freezes every muscle tight, and then moments later it stretches out in the sun. Soft and long and completely at ease. The whole cycle from contraction to expansion is natural and effortless. The body knows the way back. This is its nature. This is what it was built for, not the tightness. The tightness is temporary, a response to something that frightened or hurt. What is natural, what the body always returns to when it can, is openness. And forgiveness at its deepest is this same movement, not in the muscles and the bones but in the heart. Now, forgiveness is a word that can make people tighten up rather than soften. It carries a great deal of weight. For some it sounds like something you are supposed to do, like a duty or an obligation, and the very idea of it feels heavy. For others, it sounds like being asked to pretend that something painful did not happen or that it did not matter. And for many of us, it brings up the face of a particular person or a particular memory, and the chest closes rather than opens. So let us set all of that aside for a moment. Let us not talk about forgiveness as an idea or a moral principle. Let us talk about it as something much simpler, as a movement, as the heart doing what it naturally does when it is given the space and the time and the tenderness it needs. The way a clenched hand held long enough eventually wants to open. Not because someone tells it to, not because it should, but because opening is what hands do when they are no longer afraid. A beloved writer once put it this way in his own quiet words. He wrote something like, "For so long I insisted that you alone were to blame, and then in this one instant, my eyes opened, and I offered you all the tenderness and forgiveness I had been holding back for so long." There is something in those words that is worth sitting with. The phrase "I had been holding back," because that is what unforgiveness is. It is a holding back, a withholding not just of kindness toward the other person, but of something we are withholding from ourselves. A softness we will not let ourselves feel, an openness we will not let ourselves return to, a freedom we are refusing, because some part of us believes that staying tight and closed is the same as staying safe. And in one sense, it is closing the heart is a kind of protection. When we have been hurt, the heart closes the way a sea creature pulls into its shell. This is wise. This is the body's intelligence at work. We do not need to judge ourselves for it. But the shell was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be a shelter, not a home. And at some point, when the danger has passed, when enough time has gone by, when the waves have gentled, the creature is meant to open again, to reach back out into the water, to feel the current on its soft, unprotected body, and to be alive again, fully alive, in a way that is only possible when we are open. Clear's Throat, a wise observer of human nature, once wrote something honest and gently humorous about forgiveness. He said, in effect, that everyone thinks forgiveness is a lovely idea right up until they have something to forgive. And that is true, is it not? In the abstract, forgiveness sounds beautiful, noble, generous. But when it is your own hurt, your own wound, your own disappointment or betrayal, it feels entirely different. It feels impossible. It feels like too much to ask. And perhaps that is because we misunderstand what forgiveness actually is. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was acceptable. It is not pretending. It is not excusing. It is not even necessarily reconciling. You can forgive someone and still say firmly and clearly, "This must never happen again." You can forgive and still set a boundary. You can forgive and still protect yourself. Forgiveness is simply the moment when the heart says, "I am tired of carrying this," and it begins to set it down. Not all at once, not in a single dramatic gesture. More like the way snow melts in spring, slowly, gradually, one drop at a time, until one day you notice that the ground is clear again, and you cannot remember exactly when it happened, only that it did. The Buddha spoke of this with great tenderness. He said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned." This is not a judgment. It is an observation, a compassionate one. He was not scolding anyone for their anger. He was simply noticing that the one who suffers most from unforgiveness is the one who carries it. Let us explore a story about what forgiveness can look like when it moves out of the private heart and into the world. In a country that had known many years of difficulty, a group of monks and nuns decided to walk for peace. The land had been divided by old grievances and long-held fears. People in different regions did not trust one another. Villages that had once been neighbors had become strangers. The air between them was thick with old pain, and so these monks and nuns set out on foot to walk through the countryside. They walked slowly, deliberately. Their robes moved softly in the breeze. Their bare feet touched the dust of the road with care, as though each step were a kind of prayer, and in fact it was. With each step they offered a quiet intention. An intention for peace, for kindness, for the softening of old wounds, for the possibility that people who had turned away from each other might one day turn back. They carried with them small vessels of water, and as they passed through the villages, they would stop and gently sprinkle the water over the people who came out to meet them. It was an ancient blessing, a gesture as old as the tradition itself. The water of forgiveness, the water of loving kindness, a way of saying without any words at all, "We are still here, we remember who we are, and we wish you well, we wish you peace." The villagers would come out of their homes slowly, cautiously at first, and stand by the roadside, watching these quiet figures pass. Children would come running. Elders would stand in doorways, shading their eyes against the sun. Some people were simply curious. Some were deeply moved. Some had tears on their faces that they did not bother to wipe away and did not need to explain. Something in the sight of those walking figures, that gentle procession of peace through a troubled land, touched a place in them that words could not reach. Some of the men who had carried their grievances for years came out and laid them down in their own way quietly by the side of the road. They said in their own words something like, "Yes, we too wish for peace. We too are tired of this weight." The old monk who led the walk was asked afterward how he had found the courage to set out on such a journey, and he said something simple and beautiful. He said, "If we cannot trust enough to walk, how can there ever be peace? If we cannot trust enough to walk, that is forgiveness in its bravest form. Not waiting until it is safe, not waiting until the other side has changed, but stepping out with open hands and an open heart, because someone has to go first. Someone has to be the one who sets down the stone." And this brings us back to where we began, to the body, to the breath, to the simple physical truth that your body loves to be open. Think about the feeling after a good cry, not during it, after. When the tears have done their work, and the chest is empty and soft, and there is a quietness that was not there before. The eyes are clearer, the shoulders are lower. Something has been washed clean. Or think about the feeling of being outside on the first warm day after a long winter. The sun on your face, the bare skin of your arms feeling the air. A warmth that goes deeper than temperature, a sense of being welcomed back into the world. That is what forgiveness feels like in the body. Not an idea, not a decision, a release, an opening, a return to something that was always there, waiting beneath the tightness and the holding. The Buddha taught that our deepest nature is not the contracted, defended, armored self that we build up over the years. Our deepest nature is open, warm, vast, like the sky after the clouds have passed, and every act of forgiveness, no matter how small, is a glimpse of that nature, a window thrown open in a room that has been closed for too long. Now, it is important to say this gently. Forgiveness has its own timing. It cannot be rushed or forced or demanded. If you try to forgive before you are ready, the heart knows and it resists, and the whole thing feels false. There is no schedule for this. There is no deadline. Sometimes forgiveness comes quickly, like a sudden rain shower that clears the air in minutes, and sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it happens in layers. You forgive a little, and then you stop, and then months later you forgive a little more. Like peeling an onion gently, one thin layer at a time. And sometimes what needs forgiving is not someone else at all, but ourselves. I should have known better. I should have done it differently. I should have been stronger or kinder or wiser or more patient. I should have been more than I was. These are heavy things to carry, heavier sometimes than anything anyone else has ever done to us, because we cannot walk away from ourselves. We cannot put distance between us and our own regret. It follows us everywhere like a shadow, and yet these self-judgments deserve the same tenderness, the same patience, the same gentle release as anything else we hold against another person. Perhaps even more so, because we are the one person we will spend every single moment of this life with. And if we cannot find a way to be gentle with ourselves, the whole journey becomes harder than it needs to be. There is a teaching that says, forgive others not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. And this applies just as much, perhaps even more, to the forgiveness of yourself. You deserve peace. You deserve to set this down, not because you have earned it through some act of perfection, but because carrying it is not helping anyone, least of all the person you see in the mirror each morning. So tonight, there is nothing you need to do about any of this. No grand gesture of forgiveness is being asked of you. No difficult person needs to be confronted or absolved. This is simply an invitation to notice. Is there something somewhere in you that is ready to soften? Not the big things necessarily, not the things that still feel raw and tender and too close to touch, but perhaps something small, a grudge you have been carrying out of habit more than necessity. A harsh word you said to yourself this morning, a small resentment that has lost most of its heat, but still sits in the corner of your heart like a forgotten coat. You do not need to do anything about it. Just notice it, feel it, and if the heart wants to open, even a crack, let it. The water of forgiveness is not something you pour from outside. It is something that wells up from within when the conditions are gentle enough and the time is right. Your body knows how to do this. It has been waiting patiently to show you. Let us rest here for a while. Let the breath be soft and easy. Let the heart be however it is. And when you are ready, we will continue on together. There is an old proverb passed down through many generations that goes like this: you can only walk halfway into the darkest forest. After that, you are coming out the other side. Let that arrive gently. You can only walk halfway into the darkest forest. After that, every step you take is a step toward the light. Imagine it if you like. A forest so thick and deep that the canopy above blocks out most of the sky. The path is narrow, the light is dim. The trees press close on either side, their trunks dark and ancient, their roots tangled across the ground like the fingers of old hands. It feels endless. It feels as though you could walk and never reach the other side. But you keep walking, one step, then another, and slowly, so slowly you almost do not notice, the light begins to change. A softness enters the air. The spaces between the trees grow wider. A patch of blue appears above you, then another. A bird sings somewhere ahead, and you realize with a quiet start that you have passed the middle. You did not see a marker. There was no sign. But somehow the forest is thinning and the light is growing, and each step now is a step toward open ground. There is something in this image that the heart recognizes before the mind has even finished forming it. A quiet reassurance, a reminder that darkness, no matter how deep it feels, has a middle, and once you have reached that middle, the direction changes. Not because you did anything special, not because you solved a puzzle or found a hidden key, but because that is the nature of forests. They do not go on forever. They have edges, and the light is always waiting on the other side. We have traveled together tonight through many rooms of the same house. We have listened to the river beneath all things, flowing and changing without pause. We have chased the sunrise in an airplane and discovered that the present moment is the only time there is. We have let our weight down and felt the great winds that carry us. We have planted aramint trees and sat with a wise woman in a quiet room. We have loosened our grip on old ropes and opened the door to not knowing. We have stood in the 8 winds and felt the water of forgiveness begin to soften what was hard. And now, As we draw near to the end of this journey together, there is one more thing to rest in, something that holds all of the other teachings inside it. The way the ocean holds every wave, it is this. You are part of something vast, far vaster than the story of a single life. We tend to measure our lives in small frames. The years we have been here, the things we have done, the roles we have played. We draw a line at the beginning and another line at the end, and we call that space in between my life. And within that space we build our hopes and our worries and our sense of who we are. But the ancient teachers saw something different. They saw that existence is not a line, it is a circle, and we are not separate from it. We are woven into it the way a thread is woven into a great cloth. You cannot pull the thread out and hold it up and say this is the whole cloth. But without that thread, the cloth would not be complete. There is a beautiful passage from an Eastern poet that speaks to this with great tenderness. He wrote in his own way that nothing in this world is ever alone, not for a single moment. The fish is held by the wave, the bird is held by the sky, the seed is held by the dark, warm earth, the flame is held by the air that feeds it. The ant walks upon the ground and the ground holds it. The spark rises from the fire and the night holds it. Every living thing, from the smallest to the most vast, exists inside something larger, something it cannot see, something it may not even know is there, but it is held by it all the same. Think of the roots of trees in a forest. Beneath the surface, when no one can see, they reach toward one another, they intertwine. They share water and nutrients through networks so intricate and so generous that scientists have only recently begun to understand them. The trees look separate, standing there in their own space, each one with its own trunk and branches, but underground they are connected. They are holding one another up. They are one body wearing many faces. Even now, as you rest here, you are being held in that same way, by the surface beneath you, by the air around you, by the quiet pull of the earth itself, that gentle invisible embrace that keeps you here, that has kept everything here since the very beginning. You do not feel it most of the time because it is so constant, so faithful, so utterly reliable that it has become invisible like the sound of your own heartbeat. But it is there. It has always been there, and it is not going anywhere. There is a teaching from the high mountain traditions of the East that carries this same spirit of trust, but stretches it across a much longer arc of time. The people of these mountains have endured many difficulties over the centuries. Their land has been occupied. Their traditions have been challenged. Their way of life has been threatened more than once. And yet, when asked how they bear it, one of their great teachers said something remarkable. He said, with a gentle humor, "We have altitude in our favor, meaning our home is so high that the difficulties come, but they do not tend to stay very long. Perhaps 50 years, perhaps 100, and then they pass as all things pass. And we are still here, and the mountains are still here, and the sky is still here." There is a breathtaking patience in that response. A willingness to take the long view, not the view of a single lifetime, but the view of centuries, of millennia, of the great slow turning of time that makes even the largest upheavals look eventually like ripples on the surface of a very deep lake. This is not a teaching about ignoring what is difficult. It is a teaching about perspective, about remembering that we are part of something that has been going on for a very, very long time, and that will continue long after the current chapter has turned its page. The mountains endure, the rivers keep flowing, the stars come out every night just as they have for billions of years, whether anyone is watching or not, and somehow in some way that is hard to explain but easy to feel. We are part of all of that. We belong to it. We have always belonged to it. There is a line from an ancient sage that goes something like this: "Out of the vastness we are born, and into the vastness we return." Existence is a circle, and we make a mistake when we try to measure our life only by the small arc we can see. This is not a somber thought. It is in fact a tremendously freeing one. Because if we are part of something that vast, something that old, something that endlessly renewing, then we do not have to carry the weight of the whole story on our own small shoulders. We are one thread in the cloth, one note in the music, one wave in the ocean, and the ocean does not depend on any single wave to be the ocean. There is a great peace in that. A peace that comes not from understanding everything, but from resting in the knowledge that you do not have to, that the mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a home to be lived in, that you can set down the need to figure it all out, and simply be here, breathing alive, part of the great unfolding. The Buddha, when asked certain questions about the nature of existence beyond what can be seen, would sometimes remain silent. Not because he did not care, but because in that moment silence was the truest answer. Some questions are not meant to be answered with words, they are meant to be held, wondered at, bowed to, and then gently released. And this brings us to perhaps the simplest teaching of all. 3 small words that a great Zen master offered when he was asked to summarize the whole of Buddhism. He did not give a long lecture. He did not quote ancient texts or describe elaborate practices. He simply said, "Not always so, not always so. The pain you are feeling right now, not always so. The joy, not always so. The confusion, the clarity, the loneliness, the connection, the fear, the courage, not always, so not always. So the sleepless night will end. The long winter will soften. The worry that feels so heavy tonight will one morning feel lighter, not because you forced it to change, but because that is what all things do. They change. They turn, they move." These 3 words contain everything we have explored tonight. The river that is always flowing, the sunrise that is always arriving and always departing, the winds that blow and change direction, the heart that closes and opens and closes and opens again, the almond tree that grows slowly toward a future it cannot see, the still point at the center of the turning world, the forgiveness that comes when it is ready, like the first rain after a long dry spell. All of it, every bit of it, held in 3 small words, not always. So there is no sadness in this. There is freedom, because if nothing is permanent, then nothing is stuck. The difficult time you are in will change. The joy you are savoring will change too. Yes, but it will be followed by other joys, other sweetnesses, other moments of unexpected grace that you cannot yet imagine. Life is endlessly creative. It never runs out of new things to offer. Not always so, and therefore always possible, always new, always beginning. There is an ancient chant that has been offered in the Buddhist tradition for over 2,000 years. It has been whispered at bedsides and in great halls in times of celebration and in times of quiet reflection. And it says very simply, all things that come into being have the nature to arise for a time in a certain form, and then to pass away. They appear and they are beautiful, and they change. To understand this and live in harmony with it brings the deepest kind of peace. This is not something to believe. It is something to rest in, like resting in a warm bath or snorts, in the arms of someone who loves you, or in the deep soft quiet of a night, when the sky is full of stars and you have nowhere to be and nothing to do but breathe. You are part of all of this. The stars, the rivers, the turning of the seasons, the breath that is moving through you right now, the heartbeat that has been faithful to you since before you can remember, the vastness that was here before you arrived, and that will be here long after, and that is here now in this moment, holding you as it has always held you. A teacher once said that if you cannot create anything original, do not worry about it. Just create a cup from which your brother or sister can drink. That is what these teachings are. Not original, not new, just old water poured into a simple cup offered with kindness. And what matters is not the cup, but the drinking. Not the words, but the quiet that follows them. Not the teaching, but the way it settles into your bones and becomes over time a part of how you breathe and walk and meet the world each morning. You do not need to remember any of this. You do not need to take notes or make a plan. The river remembers. The breath remembers. The heart, that faithful, tireless companion, remembers everything it needs. And it will carry what matters into tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. All things change. This is the truth, and in the understanding of it there is peace. Not always so, not always so, and in that not always a world of tenderness, a world of wonder, a world that is always beginning again. Let us rest here now. Let the breath be slow and soft. Let the body settle into whatever holds it. There is nothing more to do, nowhere else to be. Just this breath, just this moment, just this gentle, vast, ever-changing now. And when you are ready, we will close together. And so we come to the end of our time together, or perhaps not the end. Perhaps just a pause, like the space between one breath and then the next. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the simple, generous act of giving your attention to these old teachings, these old stories, these quiet reminders of what your heart has always known. You do not need to carry any of this with you. Let it rest where it has landed. In the body, in the breath, in whatever corner of the heart was open to receive it tonight. The seeds have been planted, and like the old man's almond tree, they will grow in their own time, in their own way, without any effort from you at all. Outside, wherever you are, the world is turning. The stars are making their slow journey across the sky. The same journey they have made for billions of years. The moon is doing whatever the moon does tonight. Full or thin or hidden, it does not matter, it is there, and so are you, part of the same vast, gentle, ever-changing mystery. All things arise and all things pass away, and in the space between there is this breath, this warmth, this quiet, this moment of rest offered freely with love. May you be at ease, may your heart be soft, may you trust the great winds that carry you even in your sleep. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at